Module 3, CAD exercise. Today we're going to look at our drawing exercises using AutoCAD, and in this exercise we're going to create these 5 different geometric plate drawings. There's a bonus assignment that you can choose to do. It's not required. Information about the chapters is given here, and here's our link to the assignments. Plate number 6 looks like this. It's basically the circular geometry that we'll be using draw commands for circles and arcs. We'll also set up our drafting settings for grid and for snap. Alrighty, so let's get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to download this plate title block template, which will be the base drawing title block that will create the geometry on. We'll open that. And so here we have our AutoCAD. And I've opened my template drawing. I'm going to download it and open it and then resize it in my browser. And so I can resize my browser, keeping everything on the screen. Virus protection. Alrighty, and so here we have our drawing editor. If I push the wheel on the mouse, I can pan over. The first thing we like to do is to go through and turn on our menu bar, and so next to the airplane there's this little down arrow right here. And it looks like mine's already on. If I turn it off, you'll see that it's gone. Turn it back on, show the menu bar. And then I like to use the tools, drafting settings, enable snap 0.5, and our grid is also enabled. Polar track settings are enabled with an increment angle of 15, and object snap, we're going to disable it. We're not going to use it at this point. Alright, and then we're going to start. We'll take a look at our layer. We're at layer 0, which means that we're drawing on the basic applied layer for the drawing. We have our grid enabled. We can see our grid with these squares here, and then we won't actually snap to a grid pattern until we actually select the command. So if I choose circle, now you'll notice that the cursor snaps to the grid, and I can go and click here, and then I can click here. Notice that when it's in diameter, it doesn't follow the cursor mark exactly, versus if I were in radius. You can repeat that command. You can say repeat circle, and then you can choose the next point location, repeat. You can copy, so if we want to use a modify command, we can come over here and select the copy command. Remember, if you stay and hover longer, you'll get more help with the commands. You can also choose the copy command and then hit the F1 key, and then you can go into the help and you can say copy, and it'll give you instructions on how to copy an object. But we'll show you right now in the video, and so what we'll do is we'll select copy. Notice that the cursor changes to a small square that allows us to select what we want to copy. We hit enter, where we want to copy it from, where we want to copy it to, and we'll just go ahead and put all these smaller circles in, and then we'll hit the escape key, cancel out of the copy command. Notice that we have line weights enabled so that the lines are a little heavier looking. Here's how I disable that. Again, you can go into the customization. We pretty much turn everything on. We can disable certain things as we run into issues with them. And then that'll populate the bottom of the user coordinates screen with these different hieroglyphics that you can hover over and get the commands. Alright, back to work. Let's go and create another circle. Notice that when I bring the circles, I'm not bringing them at an angle like that. I'm bringing them at a horizontal position or a vertical position. They're more precise to the grid that way. And then when we create this arc, we'll use a 3-point arc command, and we'll go and select it at this point right here, this point right here, and then this point right here. We can repeat that arc command. You could, if you wanted to, mirror or copy. If we were to mirror something, we could say mirror, and then we go into the selection mode, and so bring my command line back. It says to select the objects to mirror, and so I could select this object as an object to mirror. It tells me that it has found the object. I can hit enter, and then the first point of my mirror line can be here, and notice that dynamically updates. Erase the source object, no, and then it just mirrors it, and it's perfect. It goes exactly in per our coordinates. And so there we have created our CAD drawing of our first plate. We want to update the title block, and so we can double click here and we'll say our initials. Green check mark, and then we'll put our student name here. Notice that if your name is really long, you could come in here, highlight it, and change the text size to something a little bit smaller to squeeze more letters in. Update to the correct date. Scale will be 1:1, and that'll complete our first plate. And then these plate title block templates have multiple tabs, and so we can select the next tab to then go ahead and create the next drawing. And so we'll come back here to D2L, and we'll go and download plate number 7. Alright, and so this is our plate drawing. I'm going to size it, and then we're going to go here again. We're going to get set up to draw, and so we'll go check our drafting settings. We want object snap to be off, regular snap and regular grid to be on, 0.5, 0.5. Polar tracking is enabled, and again, object snap is off. And these are the same settings that are down here at the bottom of the screen. We can go ahead and choose to turn those on and off. If we start off by drawing this triangle in the middle, we can start off with the line command, and we can just go and say OK up to over 1. Click. Now I'll hit escape. Then I'll draw the other components. If we're counting dots, we would say 1, 2, 3, 4, and each dot is, or at least each square is ½ an inch. So it would be 2 inches up from the bottom line, and then if we counted over 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 inches over. And so if we go with our circle command and we go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We can start with that geometry. And then we can draw the next lines here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so that would be 4 inches. If we click a line, you can actually let the CAD system do the math for you. And so that would be 8 units or 4 inches at a half an inch per unit. Hit escape, circle, center radius. And CAD systems are really developed to go as quick as you can think. And so you can use a lot of left mouse, right mouse clicking scenarios. And then we can go and find the location for this last circle, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, or 2 inches down. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Create a line from the 6 o'clock position there to the 3 o'clock. And when I say that 6 o'clock or 3 o'clock, I'm referring to like a clock or to the unit's coordinate system. So if we look at the units and then we look at these angle types, 0 is horizontal and then 90 is vertical. And I'll see if I can find a better example for that at some other point. Back to the line command. So this would be considered like 3 o'clock and this would be like 6 o'clock. Hit the escape key and there we have it, our little robot face. Update the title block, student name and date, and then go on to the next one. So we'll click to the next plate. Again, we'll check to see if our drafting settings are set. So we have snap and grid on, polar tracking on, object snap off. Looks good. We'll get our next drawing. So we'll make this kind of a chain type of a shape here. And so as we go and draw this, this is a good example of one that you can draw geometry that you're going to erase or trim rather than try to draw all these as arcs. It's easier to draw them as circles and then to cut them in half. And so we can go and we can start off by drawing a circle. And then we can draw the other corresponding circles. And then we can then measure the distance between these two center points of the chain. And so if we count grid points, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 3 inches. And so you could just draw a line. You don't have to necessarily keep all of it. And so that would be 3 inches. That would be right there. Hit escape, and then we just repeat the geometry. We can create it again, or we could copy it. I'm using the left mouse, right mouse technique. I'm going to click on this one and erase it. And then I'm going to draw the other lines, bring this one here. Now if you're getting something like if you have an object snap-on, a running object snap-on, you may get an error when you try to go from one point to the other. This one is working because I have quadrant on, and so when I draw these lines it's getting the quadrant of the geometry, but sometimes it might take center or something like that. And if it did that, it would give you an error. And so it's best when you do these plate drawings just to leave object snap off. You don't need it for this exercise, so I'm just going to turn that off because we're just snapping on grid locations. And so as we create this drawing, If you go over a little bit, you can grab it with the snap and bring it back. Escape is your best friend. You can end or terminate the commands by hitting escape, and then we can trim these with the trim command. And again, if you hover long enough over the trim command, it will teach you how to use it with the help screens. And so essentially what they're doing is they're showing that once you invoke the trim command, you can kind of swipe through the walls to trim the locations. And so that's what they're showing in the left-hand picture versus the right. And so if you say trim, you can then just kind of swipe through your geometry to kind of get these different geometries. I'm going to undo that. Looks like I need to get some of the other ones. And maybe what I'll do is I'll just trim it out to be like a ellipse or a chain link. And then we'll so there we have the basic geometry for it. I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to move it just because I'd like to be centered on the screen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it and then I'm going to rotate it. And so I'll come over here, panning by pushing the wheel on the mouse, copy, select, hit enter. Where do you want to copy it from? Where do you want to copy it to? And you can continue to copy until you hit the escape key or right mouse button. Rotate. Again, if you hover over the command long enough, it will give you the information on how to select and use that command. You can always hit F1 for more help. Rotate, select the object, hit enter. Where I want to rotate it from, I typically choose my rotational point on the part or in the middle of it. And then I'm going to move it. Again, select what you want to move, hit enter, where you want to move it from and where you want to move it to. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back through and trim everything. And so we'll zoom in. If I think of this kind of as a racetrack where the road is going up and over, this would be trimmed with this line's being sliced right out there and this one here. And then over here my road would be like this, and then this one here, and this one here. Alright, so that completes this exercise. Again, make sure that you update the title block to the correct date. Put your initials on it. Student name. Green check mark. Alrighty. So we have 3 of our plates completed. 1, 2, and 3. You can right click on these tabs, and so you can rename them. So instead of plate 1, the name should be plate number 6. And so if I update that, if we want to be perfectionists, which we get paid to do this, and so we want everything to be accurate. It's also not a bad idea to save the file to a location, so I can go File, Save As. and then I can save this to a known location. So if I'm going to save this to my folder number 3, I can save this as my initials. We're saving this as an AutoCAD DWG type file. You can also dial it back to older versions which are compatible backwards. We'll hit save, and then we'll take a look at our next plate. Alrighty. Again, we'll check our grid and snap. Tools, drafting settings, snap and grid, enabled, half inch, polar tracking, enabled, 15, object snap, disabled. Alrighty. We'll start off in the center of it by drawing a circle, and then we'll draw another circle. Now this one is halfway in between, so we have to update our snap setting so that it's 0.25 instead of 0.5. And so we can go back to our drafting settings and go to our snap, and then we can dial this down to 0.25. And then we'll get more accurate settings for that. And so when we draw this second circle, we can draw it halfway, and then we can draw the rest of them. Now this one at this point here would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 2.5 inches. And you can see that the computer will do the math for you. This is called dynamic input. It gives you that feedback, and so like if you want to check accuracy, you can put a grip on it and hover over that, and you can see what your dimensions are. I hit escape to take that off. I can then draw one more, and so we'll draw this one half a unit bigger, or 1 cube bigger. Then we'll draw the lines. 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and back to 12, escape. We'll draw the 3-point arcs. Now here's sort of a little bit of a tip to get the line to be exactly tangent to that point, because when you try the 3-point arc, you can't quite hit the spot typically. And if we turn off the line weight, because CAD is super accurate, just isn't exactly perfect. And so to make that arc exactly perfect, we'll make a construction line with the line command at a 45-degree angle. And remember, if we have the polar tracking, we get this green line every 15 degrees. And so once we get up to 45, you may have to finagle with it a little bit to get it to read that. There it is. I'll draw and click a line. I'll hit escape. Now when I draw my 3-point arc, I can go 1, and then here what I want to do is I want to go and shift right mouse click and say intersection. We want to grab a running object snap, and I'm going to hit my F9 key